right, welcome everybody to the latest episode of The Replay. My name is Dan Bonham. I'll be your host today, and I am joined by Ed Weber and Matt LeBoeuf. Ed, thanks for joining us today. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hey guys, I'm Ed Weber. I'm the Dean of Students here at Immaculata, but before that I was the band director for a lot of years. So I'm excited to be on the program here today. I'm excited to be talking about the Planetarium. It's one of my favorites. Certainly a lot of memories from not only from a competitive standpoint, but also from just the spirit we had with the kids, and looking back at the videos, it brought me right back to that time in my life that was really very special. So I'm excited about this show.
Cool. Thanks, Ed. And also joining us is Matt. So Matt, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
All right. Thanks. I'm new to podcasting, but I'm excited to be here. Like Dan said, my name is Matt. I graduated from Immaculata High School in 2013, and this show was my junior year marching. I was in the drum line. I played the snare drum during the Planetarium, and I now help the Immaculata band, and I'm on the staff there with Dan, and it's a good time. But yeah, the Planetarium, it was my junior year, and it's going to be fun to look back on that show. It was definitely a really fun time, and I have a lot of fond memories, particularly things involving shining lights and streamers and very loud high brass, and just a great marching band in general. So I'm excited.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks again, Matt, and thanks to Ed for joining us. It should be a lot of fun to go back and take a look at the 10-year anniversary, which seems crazy that it was 10 years ago already.
10 years.
Of the show called The Planetarium. So a little bit about the show, in case you haven't seen it before. We really got ourselves back into storytelling this year, which we had gotten away from for a couple of years. And it's really the story of a little girl and her brother taking a trip to the planetarium, which, as you can imagine, in our thought process was not too many little girls are excited to go to the planetarium with their brother, but we made a real big day about it, and we'll talk about that a little bit more with the big day. The show featured 4 tunes. The opening and closing was Clair de Lune by Claude, is it Debussy? I always followed the last name.
Debussy.
Debussy, cool. I think that was the first time, Ed, that we've ever used Debussy. I don't think we've ever used his music in the past.
Probably, yeah, because it tends to be a lot of, piano type stuff.
Yep, so that was the opening and closing. The second tune was 1,000 Airplanes on the Roof, Philip Glass piece, used by a whole bunch of drum corps, and we actually used some more Philip Glass a couple years later in our Rise show. The drum solo and the third tune was featuring some of the music from the Planets, the ballad, and that was music from Gustav Holst. And I don't think we've used too much Holst over the years, but the first time that, in my memory, that we used it was way, way, way back in 1987, which was the band's first state championship ever. So kind of a fun repeat of some music that we used from Holst. And then the drum solo was music from Star Trek, a tune called Enterprising Young Men by a composer named Michael Giacchino. And I think that was the only time we've ever used some of his music. So Matt, as we take a look at some of those tunes, what are the ones that jump out to you, and what do you remember about that as a performer?
Probably the Star Trek tune.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of how we referred to it when we were marching. I just remember the general excitement that, because there's always a moment in the season where everyone's wondering what the marching band show of the season is going to be. And there's a bunch of hype around that. There's usually some sort of reveal video, and everyone's sort of guessing because the staff is sworn to secrecy when it comes to announcing the show. And so it's a big marching band that year, and we're all just wondering, coming off of the play season, what we're going to be playing this year. And that tune in particular, from Star Trek, the movie, I don't know how recently compared to the show it had come out, but there was a lot of hype around that film, and it was definitely perceived as an exciting one. And I feel like we were sort of the first to adapt that movie, which is another exciting part of it. I know at least one drum corps and some other marching bands had done that tune in future years, but I want to say that we were like one of the first to say, hey, this could be a really good marching band tune.
Yeah.
But there were just a bunch of moments from that in particular. I mean, I'm sort of biased because that's the drum solo. Like when, we've got these streamers flying and the drums are up front, the brass is behind us. And when we hit that last note, the brass comes back in with the main theme. I don't know, just total goosebumps, especially being in front of the brass at that time.
Yeah.
It's like, that's such a cool moment because battery's usually behind the brass. So yeah, totally.
And how about you? Of those four tunes, what are the ones that jump out to you, and what's the most memorable?
Well, the whole show is memorable for a lot of reasons. The Philip Glass stuff, we were super excited about that from, the band director side of it. We felt like it was really, a step in a different direction for us. And so we were excited about that stuff, certainly Star Trek and whatnot. I mean, the Holst music and the ballad, Holst is a huge band tradition, right? In concert band and whatnot. And so for us to be able to put it outside was a big deal for us,
Yep.
But yeah, so I mean, all of the tunes I was really excited about. It's funny because at the time I was probably the least excited about like the Debussy stuff, and going back, it kind of spoke to me in a different way now, So, I think we'll probably get to this, but the book ending of the show too, ending down, like there was so much discussion about whether or not we should end big and loud and in your face or go back to that Claire de Lune stuff. And, when rewatching, I'm glad we did, glad we went back to it. So.
Now, I think it put such a nice period at the end of the sentence, right? With the story of the little girl and reaching for the stars and all that. So that Debussy piece, I think we used it really well too, because it was short enough.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have these big, long, expansive introductions and closers and everything. And this was just like, hey, we're going to give you 30 seconds of this great tune and hope you enjoy it.
Well, yeah, I mean, the show, the one I was watching online, is almost 12 minutes long.
That's the one that had the intro, right? And we were
Yeah.
talking about this before. I totally forgot about that because I watched the Nationals video and it was just about 8 minutes and 45 seconds, which is really long for a band show, but kind of short for us.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Especially at that time. But,
yeah. And then I went back and watched, it might've been the Piscataway version of the show. It was like 13 minutes. Like, wait, what was 13 minutes?
Yeah.
And I forgot about the whole pre-show, wandering on into the planetarium.
Well, and the thing with those pre-shows is, like, this is always a fight with the staff too, is like, we have to practice that stuff and we're not getting competitive credit for it, so it was, we're adding all this time to the show and sometimes even drill, because I think, was it the next year or the year after that, we actually put drill in our pre-show.
Yeah.
And so we were doing all this work and not really getting any credit. The judges were still eating the sandwiches from the band parents, like they weren't even paying attention. So.
And that was definitely, at least new for me, the acting component. I feel like that was the first time that we had implemented some sort of using our face in marching band. Typically we're underneath the helmets and we're just trying to be military, super cool. But here, I don't know. I mean, there was a lot of staff that were getting involved saying like, you guys have to be wide-eyed, in awe, like using these big words to really get us excited about, like, you got to actually be entering a planetarium and, show that off to the audience who's like, yeah, exactly.
I think for the drum line especially, so like the way the activity evolved, right? Color Guard always did most of the acting for years and years. Then the band proper started getting involved. And the last people to get on board with that was like the drum line, and I think for us, the Planetarium was one of those shows where finally we're like, hey guys, you got to play your part too. You can't just stand in the back, like a little soldier. So yeah.
It's funny you bring that up though, Matt, because one of the things I love doing is just going back and remembering the whole show design process. So we typically announce the show in like late winter, mid-spring or something. But like months before that, the staff is getting together and meeting and coming up with ideas. And I found like our show design document from that year. And one of the very first things that was in there were the different moods of the show, which I don't know if we've ever talked about moods before. It was usually music or concepts, but we talked about moods like wondery, discovery, fear, excitement, adventure. And not that all those moods made it into the show, but we really started with kind of the emotion in the story before we said like, okay, we're going to do Star Trek or we're going to do Debussy.
I think that played into the storytelling too, right? So we wanted to tell that story, but we wanted people to feel it.
Yep.
And it's hard to do in a band show, like, so we were trying to inject immediately that emotion,
Yep.
And I think that was all just so new for the students at the time. I mean, being asked to do something that out of your comfort zone when we're so used to a particular way of doing marching band, everyone starts with the giggles. Everyone starts with, oh my gosh, this is so silly. Why are we doing this? But I think having everyone contribute to the acting component as well as the brother and the little girl sort of, I think it added, even though we were getting judged for it, another layer to the show that sort of brought everyone into the story.
Yep.
But
certainly the audience.
Yeah. Some other music we spoke about, just looking at these old design notes, some music from Angels and Demons, the movie. We talked about Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, When You Wish Upon a Star, Moon Dance, music from A Beautiful Mind, which we ended up using a couple years later, and then music from the How to Train Your Dragon soundtrack, which we also ended up using a couple years later. So funny that some of these ideas, you just take them and you put them on the shelf and then you bring them back. We also talked about music from the movie Soarin'. From the Disney ride Soarin'.
Soarin', right? Yeah, we did a lot of work on that. Remember?
Yeah. The other show that we talked about pretty heavy that year that was kind of our second choice was music from Pollock, which I think is a movie, but also kind of the story of Jackson Pollock, which was a pretty big theme for a winter guard that had a whole lot of success with that. So I know Ed Dosher was brainstorming a whole bunch of ideas around that too. So just funny to take a look back at some of the old ideas that we had talked about that, sometimes again get put on the shelf or just don't make the cut that year.
Yeah, for sure.
So a little bit about the season. So some of the competitive results. So from looking at the scores and the slate, it looks like we did 8 shows that year. A lot of the standards that we've done over the years, the Scotch Plains, the Piscataways, the South Brunswicks. We went up to the Meadowlands to do the Yamaha Cup that was early in October, Somerville Show, Hillsborough, and then championships were in Old Bridge that year, and then nationals were down in Annapolis, Maryland. So it was nice that we did the Yamaha Cup, so we got the opportunity to go hit Giant Stadium that year too. A couple of things that I found pretty funny. The drumline had a whole bunch of success that year, and I was surprised when I looked back at the stats to see that they didn't win drums at the very first show at Scotch Plains, which, whatever happens, scores are scores. But then I went back and did a little digging and found out that there actually wasn't a drum judge or a color guard judge at that show, but it just happened that the host of that show bought trophies for color guard and drums, so they decided to give it to whoever won music. Which for anybody who knows me, I love the band, I love designing shows, but for the 5 minutes after awards are announced, I'm a crazy over-competitive person. So I got a little bit upset, let's say, to find out that the drumline award went to somebody without a drum score being kept. So that got a little bit crazy for a couple of days afterwards with calls over to US bands and USSBA or whatever they were at the time. So I thought that was kind of fun.
I had to provide some cover.
Yeah. Thanks for the support there.
Yeah, of course.
Matt, I know you said you were a big fan of the Somerville show that year. You thought that was one of the band's best runs. What do you remember from that night?
Yeah, I just remember, Somerville in general it's our home show, and there's always a lot of hype around that. We start warming up at Immaculata, and there's a march that happens from Immaculata High School as we go to the Somerville competition. So it's like home field advantage, home lot. And I just remember having a great lot performance and that translating into a really good show. From watching the recording though, I have to say that the brass too, they just sound so, and excuse my lack of for a better word, but loud and, bringing the heat that day, but just for no particular reason except for, intensity and cleanliness of the drumline. There was just a couple things that really locked into place that night. Mm-hmm. And I just always love a good Ville show.
Matt, you've always been a fan of the Somerville show.
Are we going there?
Yeah, no, we are. A couple years later.
It wasn't that. It was 1 year later.
1 year later. Okay. Is when, we're sitting in the judges meeting and I'm hearing our band playing America going down the street, walking back to Immaculata, Anybody
that's part of that
band,
hype component. Yeah. That's, sometimes you can't control it. That's all.
Anybody that's in the band remembers, we used to make you guys play America walking back from home football games if we had won.
Our parade tune.
Yeah, it was basically to practice it because we needed to do that sometimes. But, all of a sudden we hear America, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, I can't believe they're playing this right now. Walking past all these bands. And meanwise, you guys hadn't played for
hours. It was cold too.
It was 20 degrees.
Yeah.
It was just this horrible version of America. I was ready to strangle you. But
I was center snare at the time, and I kind of just thought to myself when we're walking back, I'm like, hey, I've got a lot of control here. Like I can just, because it's just like tap, tap,
Yeah.
tap all the way back to Immaculata High School. And I just thought to myself, like, all it would take is a roll off, 2, 5, 6, and then the drum line was just ready. Like the bass drum mallets came out, and like as soon as the band heard that roll off, I saw the horns flick up, and they started playing America, and it was fun. I mean,
it was, yeah. Well, they're well trained, right? So once you start that, you can't stop. So it's kind of a one-shot deal. But it was definitely legendary afterwards.
I'm sure the people at Somerville love to hear America at 10:15 on a Saturday night when they're all in bed.
Yeah, it was
or later.
Late.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. It was late, and oh my gosh! But
I got in trouble. I mean, I heard
from
from our band directors, and
yeah, whatever.
I didn't.
Those are the things that
definitely better to look at in hindsight, not at the moment, but
sure.
And yes, I do love a good Ville show. Yes.
Yeah, it's the Somerville hype got the better of me, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And any of those shows jump out to you from that year?
Well, I mean, I was looking at, it's hard because it starts to blur together. I've done so many competitions, right? But I do watch the Somerville show as well, and then even nationals and stuff. The thing that like I was surprised about, because I hadn't looked at this show in a long time.
Yeah.
The tempo, holy smokes! I mean, the Philip Glass stuff in the beginning. I mean, boy, we were cranking. What was that, like 180 something?
It had to be at least 172, if not 180, right?
I was gonna say 172.
I mean, nobody does that anymore. I mean, those days are gone. And then the other thing that was sticking out to me was we had them doing so much while playing. The
woodwind feature in airplanes. Oh my gosh!
Yeah, nowadays, if you're dancing, you're not playing. That's it.
Yeah.
And back then we were trying to integrate that stuff, and we did. I mean, they pulled it off. But holy moly, that stuff.
I was shocked watching that woodwind feature in the middle of airplanes. They're dancing, they're playing. Like there was a lot going on there.
Yeah,
really
yeah.
Cool.
I know we practiced the crap out of it.
That body was in there at band camp, I think.
Yeah,
like that was early on when we were adding those movements, so they were able to clean that as we got more into the season.
Right. Well, that was just design. So, I mean, the body thing was starting to happen all over the place.
Yep.
And we had been pretty good with lower body stuff. But then we started trying to integrate upper body and things like that. And we learned the hard way, actually, that if we don't get it in early,
yeah, it's too hard.
It would be too hard for them to pull off. So that's where some of that came from.
The other things that jump out to me from that year was we had a show at South Brunswick in early October, and it rained. So that was an indoor show, which again, I don't really remember that stuff until you go back and look at some of the notes. But the craziest thing was this was a nuts year for weather. So right after band camp was when Hurricane Irene hit. And I think did we lose any time the following week? I don't remember. I feel like there were some floods and we lost like some Monday and Tuesday or something for mini camp.
Probably.
But then the most nuts thing of all time was I think it was the Friday night before the Hillsborough show, which was supposed to be the last Saturday in October. I think we got like 6 inches or 8 inches of snow.
Yeah.
And US bands did a great job. They were scrambling. They ended up rescheduling that Hillsborough show for that Wednesday night, which was the Wednesday before state championships.
Right.
And I think we were one of the few bands to go.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry.
No, Jules is a friend of ours at Hillsborough, and it's always a huge financial burden to the schools when they lose their shows.
Yep.
These our fundraising arm at Immaculata has always been our band parent association, which has been tremendous to us. But a lot of the schools, their marching band is funded entirely by their home show.
Yeah.
And so when they lose that, they lose everything for the year. And we try to help our friends out with that.
So, pulled a whole bunch of strings, went to a show on a Wednesday night and got absolutely smoked by another band in our group 6, which was just shocking because we had such a great year so far that year.
Who was it? That'd be nice. I forget.
A band in Middlesex County, South something. I forget what their name is.
That one over there?
Yeah. But again, like a phenomenal program for decades. Like, they're so darn good. so they kicked our booty by 2 points, and it was, going to states 3 days later was almost devastating because we had such a great year so far. It was like, oh my gosh, like we're going to go to states and just get mopped up by this group. So 3 days later we go to states, and I don't know what the spread was exactly, but the band that beat us by over 2 points on a Wednesday night, we beat by I think it was a 10th on Saturday night at championships and state championships, and we took home the award for visual effect, color guard, and drums, and also took home the award for the Cadets Award for Excellence.
Yeah.
And do you remember that what was that award all about?
I think it was about they had extra hats to give away. No, I'm kidding. The award itself was a cadet's hat, which was kind of cool. But I think it was I maybe like a fan favorite award. I think was kind of how they.
Yeah, I think so too. Like just most entertaining, most innovative, most original. Yeah. So we actually took that award for what it's worth for states and nationals, which is just a nice.
Yeah, we have a couple of those hats over there. I don't know, all from that year or what, but those things are tough. I mean, I think one of the hardest things for the staff is that those practices right after we get creamed, right? Whether it was that year or another year, but I remember sitting out there many times with the band on the field, and you bring them in, and they sit down, it's a Thursday night, or a Tuesday night, and we have to kind of do a little bit of spin, because it is such a subjective activity, and some days you win them, and some days you don't. And, but I think, not to pontificate too much, but I think that's how life is, right? And hopefully that they take that with them when they leave, because sometimes no matter how hard you work, somebody's just a little bit better than you that night. Yeah.
I'll add another layer of sort of cheese factor to that, but one message that I always took away from all 4 years was our goal every season, which was day to day, week to week, we have to beat Immaculata. And that theme was strong, especially during those rough weeks where the competitive results didn't go the way that we wanted them to. And that message, at least for me, it was like, it's a subjective activity. We were better than we were the previous week. We added X, Y, and Z. And as long as we could say, not even subjectively, but like concretely, like our competition this weekend was better than last weekend. Like, what more can we ask? So that, as a kid in high school, I was like, I can get behind that.
Yep. Right. And then just to wrap up the season. So the last show of the year was Nationals down in Annapolis. The band came in second by a quarter of a tenth, it looks like. Lost to a band from Tennessee called Munford, and we did capture the awards for effect, music, guard, and percussion, the Esprit de Corps Award and the Cadets Award for Excellence. So it looks like we were a real fan favorite that year with a real fun show. So
another thing about the Cadets Award, though, is it really makes the drum major picture with the color guard captains really pop.
Yeah,
I really always enjoyed that because we would always do a post competition pose with the trophy and the captions, but.
Yeah, it's cool.
I think one of our drum majors would just hold the cadet's hat.
Yeah, there was that.
There's a picture of me wearing that hat somewhere.
Oh, good. We got to see if we can put that in the pod somewhere.
Go searching for that.
So that's the competitive results. Let's talk a little bit about what made the show memorable. So I know we talked about a whole bunch of ideas. I had spoke with Ed Dosher, who is such an important part of our design team, and an important part of visual design and color guard design for all those years. He had shared. We had those 3 props in the back, which had different designs and lights on them. And the mom's like sewing all these LED lights. That was a really big thought early in the year during the design process, was like, let's get the field to pop a little bit and have these flashing stars all over the place. So we had those 3 big props that were all over the back of the field, which was pretty.
Those are trampolines, right, Dan?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. That was from Time and Celebration, that idea originally.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. So we'd done that 11 years earlier, and then kind of brought the concept back. And I'm sure those trampolines went to some band parents' kids, and when the season was over, I don't know where they disappeared to.
Yeah, right.
The other thing I really liked was during the drum solo, that was a kind of our meteor shower part of the show. And there were tennis balls with these big long streamers that while the drums were up front playing, the band was just like in the back, just throw it with, were they tennis? They've been baseballs.
No,
I thought they were tennis balls.
They were
baseballs?
They were baseballs at camp, and then we realized that they would hit people. And we just, I don't know. So
I never heard that they used to be baseballs.
It was like a prototype with a baseball. Yeah. We were like, this isn't going to work. But.
Yeah. But they had these big, long, 10-foot streamers, and things were just kind of flying through the air, and that worked out.
Really they were sewn by, I believe, Ackerman's grandfather was a tailor. And
really?
if I'm not mistaken, yeah. And they were covered in black socks, and then they would have us sew the end of it closed. And then the streamer part, I'm not sure where that came from, but
Okay.
Yeah,
That's funny.
hundreds of them, because we would lose them, or they would get stolen.
Yeah.
But
Or just left on the field and get a penalty. Yeah.
So we had to keep replacing them. So.
I think, again, the storytelling concept to me made the show real memorable. So there were so many iterations. And Ed, you might remember this. I don't think we had the story and the voiceover in early in the year. And there was some memory of Sister Dolores like saying like MSG is going to be at the Piscataway show and we have to make sure we record this or something wacky.
The Varsity Network thing. Yeah.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
So like that's when we really pushed ourselves to get the quotes in, and the quotes were interesting because it was originally a whole bunch of kids telling the story about the sister and going to the planetarium, and then we ended up getting, I think it was Mr. Bryson, to kind of be the announcer of the planetarium.
Okay.
Welcome to the Planetarium.
Okay. I think we ended up using Pat Burke, actually a whole bunch of kids originally, but then finally I think we went with Pat Burke.
Sis, you might learn there's a lot more up there than just the moon.
And then the little girl, who we'll talk about in a second, used the little girl's voice to be the brother and sister that were talking about going to the planetarium.
Okay, of course the stars are beautiful, but I can see all of that from my backyard. What else is up there?
Right.
So Matt, do you want to talk about a little bit about the little girl that played that role in the show?
Yeah. So that was the little girl who entered the planetarium and had a great day with her brother was my sister, Bridget. And that was sort of her debut into the Immaculata program. And that was sort of the first year where the LeBoeufs united forces to contribute to a marching band show, the one and only year. So that is one of the other reasons why this show means so much to me personally. So,
so your brother was on staff.
Kevin was teaching the brass.
Yep. You and your sister Colette were in the band.
Mm-hmm.
Bridget was acting, and then your band parents are, superstar band parents, still to this day helping out the program. 15 years.
Yeah. So mom was working with the band moms, and dad, he's always moving props or helping to fix things or build up different stuff.
Anything else for you guys about what made the show memorable?
For me, a lot of the design stuff. I mean, the pre-show was still a relatively new thing for us. Not coming on the field to a cadence, we were breaking boundaries and stuff with that kind of stuff. The other thing that really stuck out to me too was, once we started, we didn't stop. So I don't know if you remember, Dan, but there was a lot of discussion about transitions in the years prior to that.
Yeah.
Because for years, marching band would be, opener, ballad, drum solo, closer, right? And then the song would stop, everyone would clap, and you start the next song. But the activity was evolving, and we were getting killed on those transitions. And so we really, right from the beginning of the design process, built in these transitions. And it's really evident with the outro in the glass stuff. But even with the drums at the end of the drum solo, with the re-entry, how we built all that back in, those were pretty innovative design choices for us at the time, because it didn't give the kids a breather, and that show was paced so fast. I would say that the activities even walked some of that back since then.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah,
and I think
one of the.
Go ahead, Matt.
Go ahead, Dan.
Okay.
No, I was just going to add to that and say one of the transitions that sticks out to me was the connection between the pre-show and the opening tune.
Yeah.
And I wasn't on staff that year, but I can imagine that one of the discussions was, how do we connect this beautiful sort of planetarium entry music with Aaron Lott's mellophone solo of Claire de Lune? And it ended up being a vibraphone.
Yeah.
And Trevor, who I believe began the opener, took the tempo of whoever was playing the vibes, and it was ba ba ba, and then Aaron would enter in with the mellophone solo. So, and it was pretty seamless. The vibes came in when the band was ready and in position, and we sort of just went from there. Instead of hearing 1 2 1 2 3 4, and then Aaron comes in with her beautiful mellophone Claire de Lune solo at a slow tempo. So
that was cool.
Definitely.
I also love the connections and the transitions of using the voice to connect the tunes.
Yeah.
So the big brother, little sister conversations, or the announcer saying, in our next exhibit, you're going to see. Always thought that was kind of cool how we connected those ideas.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Because after the opener, the drums were all facing backfield, and the drums are clicking on the rim to keep the band in time. And then there's a conversation happening between Trevor's voice and Bridget's voice.
Exactly.
Yeah,
There was always those cheats in there too. Like, the drum parts, I think, Dan, were very often written to keep the feet moving.
Yeah, I mean, that's
That's how you do it.
Yep. Anything else about the show, guys? I know Matt, you were talking about the drums at the end of the drum solo going back through the wind players.
Yeah, I remember that. That was a big cleanliness debate. I was talking about that earlier, but in general, it's just always a tough thing when you switch roles of who's in the back and who's in the front. So we were being preached to that year saying, drums, you can't just go on autopilot and watch the drum major and play your stuff, because the winds are going to be delayed. And we had this like ga 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 ba 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 ga 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 part. And there was a disconnect, and we came in with this big duple roll, just coming back through the winds, and we were playing it at like 27 inches because we were so drum solo just ended, we're slamming the drums, the toms are playing in the pit, and we ended up it's such like a minute detail I remember, but we ended up changing that part to like 0.2 inch, as quiet as we could play it, so that we could actually open our ears and hear what was going on to the winds coming back in with Star Trek.
I remember being so bummed about that decision, because I just love the big open drum stuff, but it was like, we didn't give the winds a chance to play in time.
In terms of memorable moments, though, I would say this is a very simple one, and it has to do with the ending of the show. But I'm a sucker for a good old arpeggio on a set of bells, and the show ended very simply. It was just a one chord, bom ba ba, and then right before the last note of the show, you hear "So I Have to Reach for the Stars," and it was Bridget's voice.
I never realized space was so limitless. There's a lot more to discover, so I need to reach for the stars.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Immaculata High School Marching Band.
It was so
from
simple and
Somerville,
quiet,
New
and the
Jersey.
band is doing the faded lean, pointing towards the star on the ladder. I mean, talking about some of our visual props.
Yeah.
And Bridget is, up there on the ladder holding the star, and the band's gesturing toward her. So the audience, and I think that's another topic. It was like, okay, we have to, this is where we want you to look, audience, at this time. So
That's a classic bando move.
Classic, absolutely. But classic, but effective,
Yeah.
in terms of eliciting that emotion out of the watcher. I mean, even on video, that translates really, really well.
Yep. Cool. Ed, anything else for you about what made the show memorable, or any other great memories about the season?
Oh, I mean, looking back at this time, like I said in the beginning, I mean, it was a special time. We were very big. The band was very big. We had issues finding enough bunks for everybody at band camp. I was looking back at some of that, and trying to figure that out. We had talked about moving the staff off. I remember that.
Yeah.
Fiasco for a little bit. But we were able to work it out, luckily, and so there was that. We also did the Subway challenge that year. We had this grand idea that we were going to make millions of dollars by getting Subway to support the band. They had some sort of program. I forget what it was even called, but
High School Heroes.
Thank you, High School Heroes.
Because it's a sub, and
yes, I get it, yeah. Which is basically an excuse for me to go to Subway and eat all the time. But
you're supporting the band.
Yeah, right.
What did we do? Is we just submitted a video and then we had to get people to vote or something?
Yeah, we had to submit a video and get people to vote for us. And my recollection of history is we won the popular vote, but something happened where we didn't actually win the prize. There was some other fine print there that but the video is on YouTube. I don't know, Dan, if you're gonna link it or not, but
Yeah, we'll put it up there. That's easy.
It's still out there, and it's cute because it's all that. It really brings you back to those days with rehearsals, and you hear the metronome going in the background, and
Go Subway, eat fresh!
1, 2, 3.
Eat fresh! Vote for IHS!
Football players, cheerleaders, teachers, just like everyone was in on it.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
That's so fun.
well, you win some, you lose some, as it turns out.
Exactly right. Yeah. Awesome, guys. Well, thank you so much. Any closing thoughts on the season for the Planetarium for you guys?
No, I hope everybody's doing well. Those of you that were in the band at the time, it was a great time, and if you're around, come and see us, because things are really moving really great here. We have what's the band doing this year, Dan?
So the show is called Dreamscapes, and it's actually for any old school folks out there. We're using some music from the Water Show, or the Watercolor Show, from way back in 2003. So you'll hear some music that We're doing some really cool music from the movie Inception, some really other cool Disney music. So, and music from The Greatest Showman, so A Million Dreams. So like a lot of really, really good music. So yeah, come out to a football game. The schedule's online. Come out to a competition. Or come to a rehearsal and see the new Field of Dreams. That's
I was say the Field of Dreams is being returfed out my window as we speak. So
yeah, exactly. So
pretty wild that it's time for that already. But yeah.
Actually, somebody brought up a really good point, that the music we're doing this year was the music that we did the year before the Field of Dreams was installed. So
Really?
the Disney music is kind of bookending the OG Field of Dreams and the new Field of Dreams. So it's kind of fun.
Crazy.
Matt, anything else for you as a member from way back when, 10 years ago?
No, just that's one of my fondest years for sure. I mean, I was lucky to have a really good 4 years of marching band shows, and that one just sticks out to me. Being in the drum line, it was a great group, in that section with, really good leadership.
Yep.
And we were pretty big too. Like it wasn't a small group, and there was a lot of talent as well. And I know a lot of those members are doing some pretty crazy things now, people that have moved on and graduated. It's pretty nuts to, see all those guys and what they've moved on to. But yeah, so much love for that show and the people involved in making it. And then obviously the family aspect of, having that. It was something I hold dear, but that's all.
I think families, for you, family personally, but also I think the idea of family within the Immaculata Marching Band has been
absolutely all aspects of it. Mm-hmm.
People still connected over all these years, so it's pretty cool. Well, thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate you, and thanks for everybody for checking out the pod. If you have any ideas for other shows you'd like to see, don't forget we've already done the 2000 show, Time and Celebration, and we did the Lion King show from way back in 2002. So this is our third installment. So if you have any ideas for other shows, drop us a line. Thanks again, everybody. Take care.